Hi, boys and girls. It's Miss Deb, and I've got my friend Bianca here. Bianca's a mouse. She loves stories, and she asked me to tell you that she wants me to read Cinderella. Oh, because she's in it. There's mice in Cinderella, and she thought that it might be a fun thing for me to read it to you, and then you can see how useful the mice are in the story. Mice are very useful creatures, right? What would we do without them? Truly. So, are you going to sit down? Really? She says it's the most beautiful pictures, and that's why she wants to see. So, I'm going to put her over here so she can see the pictures. Thank you. You ready? Okay. Here we go. The Story of Cinderella, told by Charles Perrault. Cinderella was a girl who lived in a house with her stepmother and her stepsisters. Her own mother had died, and the father had remarried. But the stepmother and stepsisters were not very kind, and they were not very good. Cinderella was kind and good. Cinderella slept on a wretched straw pallet in the miserable garret at the top of the house, and her sisters lay on beds of the latest fashion in fine chambers with inlaid floors and great mirrors. Cinderella worked all day to make things right for them, and when her work was done, she would creep to the chimney corner and sit there in the ashes. So she earned herself a nickname, Cinder Seat. It was where she could stay warm. In spite of her rags, however, Cinderella was 100 times more beautiful than her sisters for all their fine clothes. In my own little corner, in my own little chair, I can be whatever I want to be. On the wings of my fancy I can fly anywhere, and the world will open its arms to me. Now it happened that the king's son was to give a ball. He invited everyone in the land, and they all prepared very carefully. The two sisters worked day and night trying on outfits. I like my cherry velvet, said one. I like my English trim, said the other. Cinderella worked hard to get them ready to go, running up and down the stairs doing laundry for them. And finally the day arrived, and they dressed, and they pulled, and they primmed, and they fixed their hair, never thinking that maybe Cinderella might want to go. Once as a joke they said, I wonder if she does want to go. Can you imagine Cinder Seat at the ball? Ridiculous. At last the happy day arrived, and they departed, and Cinderella followed them with her eyes as long as she could. When she could no longer make them out, she began to cry. She cried very hard, and then someone came who said, What is the matter, my child? She was beautiful, sparkly, and she was Cinderella's fairy godmother. Oh, I wish, said Cinderella, that I could go to the ball. And so you shall, my child, said the fairy godmother. Can you find me a beautiful golden pumpkin? Cinderella ran to the garden and found the best golden pumpkin she could find. The fairy godmother waved her wand, and it turned into a beautiful coach. Well, now we need some horses for the coach. And this is the part you come into, Bianca. She found mice, and they came, and the fairy godmother waved her wand and changed them into 6 white mice. sorry, 6 white horses. And then she said, we need a coachman. I think I saw a rat in that trap back there. And they took the rat out and changed him into the coachman. And then she said, oh, we need the footmen, 6 of them. I saw some lizards behind that watering can in the garden. Can you go get them? She found the 6 lizards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Changed them into footmen. Now you're all ready to go, said the fairy godmother. Oh, but Cinderella said, must I go in these rags? And she said, oh, silly me, of course not. And she changed Cinderella's rags into a beautiful gown, pink and gold and silver with diamonds and pearls. Bippity boppity boo. And then she said, now Cinderella, you are ready for the ball, but be careful to come home before midnight, because if you don't, all of these things will change back, and you'll be wearing rags, and all will be as it was. I will remember, said Cinderella. And now the king's son had learned that there was a grand princess who no one knew at all, and he ran out to receive her. He offered her his hand so that she could come into the ballroom. A deep silence fell over the room. Everyone stopped dancing. The violins stopped playing. And the great beauty of this mysterious one was so much that only a low murmur rippled over the gathering. The king himself, old as he was, could not take his eyes off of her, and whispered in a low voice to the queen that it had been a long time since he'd seen anyone so charming and beautiful. The ladies were busy studying their headdresses and their gowns in order to make one that's just like hers, if only they could find the stuff as fine and do the work so skillfully done. The young prince conducted Cinderella to the seat of the greatest honor and led her out on the dance floor, and she danced with so much grace that people wondered at her more than ever. A most splendid feast was served, but the prince did not taste a mouthful. He was so intent at gazing at Cinderella. Cinderella went to sit near her stepsisters and paid them many compliments, and shared oranges and lemons that the young prince had given her. The sisters were completely astonished. They did not recognize her at all. There's the king and the queen, and there's the sisters with Cinderella. Well, suddenly Cinderella heard the clock chime 11 hours and 3/4, so she immediately made a deep curtsy to the company and hurried off as fast as she could. When Cinderella got home, she went to look for her godmother and thanked her, and she told her how she longed to go to the ball the following night, since there was going to be a second ball, and the prince had begged her to come. And while she was telling her godmother everything that had happened at the ball, her 2 stepsisters knocked on the door, and Cinderella ran to let them in. How late you are, yawning and rubbing her eyes and stretching as if she had just wakened up out of a sound sleep. If you had come to the ball, said one, you would not have been bored, I can tell you. A most beautiful princess came, the most beautiful princess anyone could hope to see. She paid us 1,000 courtesies and gave us oranges and lemons. Cinderella was delighted. What was the name of this princess? No one knows, they said. The king is desperate. He would give anything to know who she is. At this, Cinderella smiled and said softly, was she then so beautiful? My goodness, how lucky you are. I would that I could have seen her. Ah, Mademoiselle Javette, lend me your yellow outfit that you can wear every day for me to go. Really, said Javette, I like that. Lend my clothes to a filthy cinder seat like you? I should be mad. Cinderella had expected this snub. She was secretly relieved, for what would she have done if her sisters had been willing to lend her a dress? The next night, the 2 sisters were off at the ball, and Cinderella, this time even more splendidly dressed than before, was with the prince, who never left her side, and all evening long he paid her charming compliments, and the young princess found this far from boring, that she forgot her grandmother's warning. Midnight struck, and she ran from the prince. He followed her, but he could not overtake her. In her haste, Cinderella dropped one of her glass slippers, which the prince gathered up with great care. When Cinderella reached home, she was all out of breath. She had neither the coach or the footman, and she was in rags. Nothing was left of her finery but one little slipper, the mate to the one she had lost. The guards at the palace were questioned. Had they seen a princess leave? No, no one but a young girl in rags, and she looked more like a peasant girl than a young lady. Well, when the two sisters returned from the ball, Cinderella asked them if they had enjoyed themselves again, and if the beautiful lady had been there. Yes, they told her. She was there. And at the stroke of midnight, she fled from the palace. She dropped one of her little glass slippers, the prettiest in the world, and the king's son found it. He did nothing but gaze at it all during the rest of the ball. He has certainly fallen head over heels in love with the owner of that slipper. They spoke truly, for a few days after the ball, the king's son's herald sounded through the land. He would marry the woman whose foot fit the little slipper. First they tried it on princesses, and then duchesses, and then the ladies of the court, but it was no use. None of them fit. They brought it to the two stepsisters, who did their best to shove their feet into the slipper. Cinderella was looking on, and she recognized her slipper, so she laughingly said, "Let me see if it would fit me." Her stepsisters burst into shrieks of laughter. "Fit her, Cinderseed!" Oh, they mocked her. But the gentleman who had been sent to try on the slipper looked intently at Cinderella, and finding her beautiful, he said it was no more than right. He had been ordered to try it on all the young ladies. He had Cinderella sit down, and sliding the slipper on her little foot, he saw that it fitted her perfectly, just as if it had been made of wax. The astonished sisters were amazed, and then even greater still amazed when Cinderella drew from her pocket the matching slipper. And then suddenly her fairy godmother appeared, and touching Cinderella's rags with her magic wand, she changed them into a costume still more magnificent than any she had worn before. Now her stepsisters gazed and recognized her, Cinderella, the beautiful personage they had seen at the ball. They threw themselves at her feet and begged forgiveness for all their bad treatment of her. Cinderella asked them to rise and embraced them, and told them she forgave them with all her heart, and she begged them to love her always. Cinderella was conducted to the young prince dressed as she was, and he found her lovelier than ever, and a few days afterwards married her. And Cinderella, who was as good as she was beautiful, gave her sisters a home at the palace, and on the same day married them to two great lords of court. And that is the end of Cinderella. This story, boys and girls, is one of the oldest fairy tales around. Almost every culture in the world has a version of it. There's a Japanese Cinderella, and a Native American, and in Spanish, and all the countries around the world have a story like this. Who knows why? What did you think, Bianca? Did you like it? Okay, we have to go now.